Hi everyone, and this is the build for the distance learning attendance spreadsheet. Again, it's a very simple form the students fill out every day, but with this you can take attendance automatically by having preloaded rosters that can change dynamically if students change from in-person to distance. And there's different ways to extend this as well, so you can take this base form and organize it differently or add more features to it as you have the skills to do that. So I have a plain Google form here. I'm just going to call this Murray Attendance. All I want is one question. Well, let's title it Murray Attendance as well. My one question is going to be, I agree to the rules of the class. Something along those lines. Doesn't matter what it is. You can put some sort of generic statement saying, I'm checking in for class. But we want it to be a checkbox question. And I want to say, I agree, or I am checking in for attendance. Let's put that. I am checking in for attendance. All right, this is a required question. Very important to have it be required. And then in the settings, we want to actually collect their email address. All right. Now, when you do this, you're going to do this. In my example, I don't have a bunch of fake email addresses to use. I am not going to put that. But you want to make sure you have collect email addresses. And we'll go over why that's important in a second. Response receipts is fine. You do not want to limit to one response. You want this form to be used by one student multiple times. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to cancel these. Instead of that collect email addresses, I'm just going to put in a question that says email. And I'll put that first. All right, short answer, and I'll have that be required. Again, you want to have collect email addresses, but just for the purposes of my build, I'm going to put that as a question. All right, so that is it for the form. We're going to go on to the spreadsheet now. So I will make a new spreadsheet with the responses. So if you click on responses, there's a little spreadsheet icon. I'm going to create spreadsheet. And unless you're an advanced user, for most people, I would suggest making a new spreadsheet. Even if you are an advanced user, it's nice to have all of these forms in one separate sheet. So let's go ahead and create that. So here we are. So all we have is the timestamp that it comes in, very important, the email address, and the I agree to the rules, which will just be a true, or it'll just say I agree, whatever we've put there for text. So it'll just say, I am checking in for attendance. All right, let's go ahead and submit a form just to see how it is. And I have some pre-done email addresses which I'll use for my example. So here I am on the form. And again, to get there, I can go back to the form and hit the eyeball icon for a preview. And this link also becomes a link for students to view that form to submit for their attendance. Again, students wouldn't typically put in their email address by hand, but I'm going to go ahead and do that just for the examples. I'm going to check in Pam Beasley, and whatever your school domain name is, or if you're not using a school domain, you can use a student ID number, some sort of identifier for the student. And they're going to check, yes, I am checking in for attendance, and submit. And that's it. So let's go to our form. All right, and here we have at 9:28, Pam Beasley checked in for their attendance. All right, and we want to create this sheet that dynamically takes attendance for us. So the first thing we're actually going to use is what I call a student list. And this is where we're going to house all of the information for all the students you have. So first is going to be their email. Then we're going to have student name. And then you can have as many categories as you'd like for this. For this one, I'm just going to put section. But if they're in a certain trade, you can do it by trade. You can do it by cohort if you have different cohorts of students. Maybe you have an A cohort and a B cohort coming Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Many schools are doing that. So there's lots of different ways you can extend this, but for the purposes of the demo, I'm just going to do section. So I'll go ahead and I'll nicely format that. We'll make this bigger text. So in my database, I will preload some information. I have made up fake data just for the purposes of the demo. But again, you want to have the students' real email addresses, real names, and real sections. All right, so I've preloaded my student information here. I have email addresses, names, and I made up some sections for them. We have a total of 4 sections. I'm also going to go through and just center this information. And I'll freeze that top row so we can scroll nicely. Here we go. So there's our student information. And our student list is done. Now I want to see if I can break that out by section. So this is going to be the attendance. So I want to section 1. And then this is going to take up 2 blocks because I want the student name to appear. And I also want the A or the P to appear. So section 2 will go in the 3rd column. Section 2. Section 3. And then section 4. And again, you can expand this to even more columns to do more things with it or label things differently. It is completely up to you. So I'm just merging all of these boxes. I'm going to apply some nice formatting. There we go. Make it a little bigger. And then I'll center all this. Oh, and this last one did not get merged. There we go. All right. I'm going to delete out the rest of the columns over here, so there's not extra space there. All right, so here's kind of the bare bones what we have. We're going to now have to get our student names into these sections. And if you watch the video on the basic skills or the background skills behind this project, you're going to use a filter for this. So we're going to hit equals, then filter. And I want to filter my student list. So I'm displaying this information, and I want to check to see if this information here is equal to, and I'm in section 1, so I'll put a 1 there. There we go. So these are the students that are listed as section 1, and to double check this, let's check to make sure Dwight Schrute, Pam Beasley, and Ryan Howard are all labeled as section 1. There we go, Dwight Schrute. We've skipped Jim Halpert. Pam Beasley and Ryan Howard are all section 1, so we know it's working. And what I'll do is I can just copy this and paste it over here, but just change this to 2. Now some of you may be tempted, let's get rid of this for a second, tempted to just click and drag this. And you can, but keep in mind that as soon as you do that, the letters are going to change. So in the first column, we have B and C selected. So column B and column C, which are correct. If I drag it over, those shift 1 letter. Again, if you want to freeze this, you can. We have to put $signs in front of that, which freezes the letter. And now if we drag it over, it'll be better. But we don't want the names in here, so we'll get rid of it in this column. We can keep the same code over here and just change that to section 2. I'll just copy this and paste it here for section 3. And paste it over here again for section 4. So let's zoom out and see what we have. So now we have our lists of students, and our goal is to write either A or P here for absent or present if they filled out the form on the given day. So there's 2 problems with that. One is we have to identify what the today means. So how do we take a whole bunch of forms that the students produce over time and filter only for today? And 2, we have to figure out how to make it say A if it doesn't see a form or the form is not submitted for the day, and B, how to format that and how to say P if the student has filled out the form. So the first problem we're going to tackle is how to just get the today results. So this form we filled up with all of the forms from all of the days. Now in this example, the first one is today, 9/28. But if tomorrow happens, 9/29, I fill it out again, I only want the ones from the current day. So what I'll do is I'll make a new form, or a new sheet, I should say. And we're going to call this one simply today. And I'll keep the same titles, so I'll copy and paste the titles up here. I'll copy those and paste them here. But I want just the information from today. So this is actually going to be a filter. So I want to filter the timestamp. So I'll filter column A. And what we're going to do is something called the date value. In Google Sheets, date's a very complicated topic. You can read more about it, but the date value is going to turn something into a number you can compare it against something else. That's the easiest way to put it. So if the date value of this, for all the information in there, is equal to, and you want it to be equal to today. And there's actually a function in Google Sheets called today. So what this is going to do is it's going to give us all the results just from today. And there it is. Now, just to make sure this is working, what I can do is manually change that. Let's change it to yesterday. So instead of 9/28, I'll do it 9/27. And we're no longer seeing that result, saying no matches were found. There's no date values equal to today. So we'll change it back to the 28th. There we go. And we can see, there it is. All right, we want to do the same thing here. I'm actually going to copy this code. And I will put it here. But we want to actually take B. So we're getting the information from value B if our A is equal to today. And you can do the same thing with the last one. Except we want to get the information from C. There you go. So now this is the form, but it's only going to filter the results from today. Again, just to check that, we can go back and change it to the 27th. And there you go. There's no results. As a shortcut, we can actually use one line and one command to get all the information from A through C. So this will get everything without having to put a code in several cells. So if I just change this back to the 28th, we have all the information from column A to column C. So right there, you can see it right there. All right, so now we have a sheet with just the information from today. So problem one is solved. Now we have to go to the attendance sheet. Our goal here is to make Pam Beasley's name appear as a P if she's filled out the form, and an A if she's not filled out the form. Before we do this, we actually have to include Pam's name next to her email address. So we're going to put in a VLOOKUP formula. And we're going to look for this email address in our student name list. So here we are. So we're looking for Pam Beasley in that range, and we're going to output the second index. And then we also want to include false. And if this seems confusing, go back and watch the background skills video, and I explained further how this works. So here we are, we've identified Pam Beasley's email. So Pam Beasley as a name will show up here, and we can just drag this formula all the way down. So whatever responses we have, it will automatically catch the name. And it's okay that it says NA here. So if I check in somebody else, another name will appear here. So if I do, let's grab a different email address. Let's do Andy Bernard. I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to put the form as today. So under today, we have 2, and then automatically we see we have Andy Bernard's name coming up here. So that's the power of the VLOOKUP, so you don't have to go through and search every single time. So now that we have their names there, let's go in the attendance form and actually see if we can mark them as A or P. So equals VLOOKUP, and we'll look for Pam Beasley's name in the today sheet. So in this column, and I want to return the first index because it's just that. And then I also want to include false. So it's kind of weird them outputting Pam Beesly again, but it means that it's been found. If it's not found, so let's change her response so she's not checking in today. So if she's not checking in today, her name should not appear on the list for today's responses. And in the attendance, we get an error. And if this next part's confusing, you can always go back and watch the basic skills video where I go through it more in depth. So first, I'll wrap this in an if error. An if error basically says if there's an error, you can do something about it. And in this case, I'm going to return error. There we go. So I haven't found her name, so I'm producing error. All right. So now either this is going to return her name or an error. My next thing. So if, I'm going to wrap more functions around this. So if this is equal to an error, so that whole thing is equal to an error. So we've gotten an error. So what does that mean? An error means that VLOOKUP has not found the formula. Therefore, it's produced an error. So Pam Beesly's name has not been found. So if we know that's equal to an error, we know she's absent. So let's put an A. And if this is not true, that means the VLOOKUP formula has found this Pam Beesly in the today's, and it means she's present. So that kind of is the magic formula for A or P. So essentially we're looking up to see if Pam Beesly's in the today's responses, and then if it's not, it will produce an error, which means she's absent. And if she is found, then we know she's here. There's no error, and we should produce a P. So let's go back and change her responses today to see if that changes to a P. Changing hers to today, and then magically, it's a P. Perfect. So now we can apply this formula to everyone. Keep in mind, though, that today's value will always be in column D for this example. So you want to put dollar signs around that. But the A3, we don't need dollar signs around because that's going to change based on the person. So if I copy this formula and I paste it in front of Dwight, it will refer to Dwight's name. And if I copy that formula, even paste it next to Andy, it'll produce next to Andy's name. And notice we already have a P because in today's sheet, we have Andy Bernard's name. So I'll go ahead and apply that to all my students. There we go. And notice this right here. We don't want to show A if there's no students here. So this is, while it is optional, what I like to do, and this I went over in the example as well, I'm going to say if is blank, that cell right there. So what first one I'm checking for is A2 blank? So if A2 is blank, I'm going to put nothing. And if it's not blank, I'll continue with the formula. So this pattern I use a lot to hide formulas. And again, if you're confused on how that works, I go over it in more depth in a skills video. So now when I do this, notice they're all blank because these cells are here. If I typed in a name, that comes up there because that cell is not blank anymore. This is important to have, so as students change sections, it'll automatically capture their attendance no matter what section they're in. And the last thing we'll do to complete this build is to apply some custom formatting based on if the value says A or P. So first I'll go ahead and center these. And to this whole column, I'm going to go up here and say Format, Conditional Formatting. And there's two things we want to apply. First, if the text is exactly A, I always choose red for absent colors. May just be me, but let's do a light red for a background and a super dark red and bold font for my absent. So if the cell is A, then it's going to show up like that. I want to add another rule to that. Same thing. I'm going to say if the text is exactly P, I want a light green, that's nice, with a dark green font, and again bold. So this clearly tells me my A's and my P's. What I can do is click on column B, hit the little format paste button, and apply it to column D. Intersects and merge. Oh no. All right, so we'll just kind of click and drag on those cells. Actually, we'll just click on the whole column itself, both columns, and format paste, and put it over here. So now everything's exactly the same formatting, same rules, same sizes. We'll do the same thing over here. And there you have it. There is the distance learning attendance spreadsheet. In my use of this, I can't tell you how much time this has saved me, where the students know to just fill out the form and my attendance is shown for me.